So today I want to show you some workflows I do for mastering some tracks that are electronic. So I have my session here configured, just a single audio channel. I'm actually not going to use these returns, so let me just get rid of these real quick. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this sample in. We're just going to put it in arrangement view here. Now while that's importing, you'll notice that live by default warps the track. This is undesirable for most cases because we're not here to perform with it, and what warping is going to do is do some interesting resampling things and anti-aliasing things to the track that are going to change a lot of the high frequency content, maybe add some harmonics. It's stuff that we don't want to do. So we're going to disable warp mode, and that's going to make it basically a sample for sample. You can see our formats here. We're in 44.1. If we look at our project settings, I'm in 44.1, so no real-time sample rate conversion either, which is good for us. High quality is fine. That's not going to change much. And I'm just going to bring my sample marker, the clip start here, back to the first sample, just so we're getting the whole thing. And I'm going to zoom out here and make sure that we're getting the whole project and not like clipping it off somewhere. So that's good. So I'm going to go back to my device view here. And let's give it a listen. It's a pretty good mix. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go to my plugins here, and I'm going to load a special VU meter that is a Duro meter emulation. So I'm going to throw this on the master bus here, and this will give us a nice constant reference of our peak ballistics as well as RMS, and the default settings are fine here. I'm just going to keep this all the way over here as just a reference point to work with. Okay, so the first thing I like to do here is I'm going to run it through a tube saturation emulation. It's more of a transformer modeling emulation through Waves NLS. So what this will do is basically it simulates like we're running through any old analog console, and it emulates the mic preamp. So I'm going to first set the mode to a Neve console. The SSL 4000E and G series stuff is really cool. I'm a bigger fan of this emulation. I kind of like what it does more. And by default, you'll see that all the other, most of the configuration settings are actually grayed out. That's because this plugin is right now configured to be a slave for another NLS plugin that controls it later on down the chain. To do this, we can set its VCA group to none, which will give us local control. And I'm going to actually just turn off the noise emulation here. And now what we can see here is whenever I bring up the this drive, it's going to just sort of add a little bit of saturation. It'll be really subtle, but it just kind of gives it a bit more life and harmonic content. So here's with it out. And here's with it in. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is use a linear phase EQ, and we're just going to cut all the super low sub-audible frequencies out. There's a couple different ones. I'm just going to use the low band just because it's more CPU optimized for lower frequencies. What we're going to do here is I'm just going to enable this low pass, or this high pass filter, sorry. I'm going to bring it down to about 20-ish hertz. Okay, and so you can see here we have different roll-off types. I'm actually going to change the filter model to be a resonant filter. It's a little bit closer to an analog approximation, but it's still linear phase, which is nice. The settings are fine. The roll-off's okay. I think it's good. Let me just go back to the section. We'll just make sure we're cutting out some of the super low stuff. It's important for this so you guys have at least a sub or a decent pair of headphones that can get down to these frequencies, because you're going to want to really be able to hear what's going on here. So once we have those cut, I'm actually going to use a nonlinear phase mid-side EQ called Waves Hybrid EQ. I specifically like this because it gives you a lot of different analog emulations. It also has a piano roll display of your filter center frequencies, as well as to do mid-side and stereo, and it has a built-in RTA per channel. So it's got a lot of really nice features. It's really versatile, and it's I really like how intuitive the UI is. So I'm going to change my mode from stereo to mid-side. And the first thing I want to do on the sides, I want to bring out a lot of this bass content. So let me go back to a section here again that has some bass. And we're just going to sort of high pass just the bass, just a little bit out of the side channels. I might actually bring up the quality of this a little bit. We're not going to do super drastic, just something to kind of... And you can definitely hear when I bring it up how mono it gets. So we're just kind of get the super low frequencies that'll be mono in most speakers kind of out of it. Next thing I want to do, I like to widen the highs a little bit in most mixes. Kind of just gives the air in the mix room to breathe. Just gonna pull this up, and you can kind of hear all the little hi-hats and little rhythmic parts come out a little bit. And if you look at the actual, it's important to notice the scale of your EQ here. That's a fairly substantial boost. In most mastering, you usually don't want to do too much. So I don't usually like to go more than this, but it's definitely super audible. Next thing I'm going to do, probably going to bring up maybe wherever these strings are. Let me see if I can hear it. Right about here. Bring up the quality. I'm going to change this filter model to be a different sort of approximation. It's a bit tighter of a bell filter. It's a different curve. Just, here we go. And I'm actually going to compensate by notching this area down a little bit. There we go. I'm pretty happy with this. Now let's look at our center channel here. I'd like to kind of bring up this little synthy part right here. Bring up some of the cymbals. And last I want to look at this kick. I think the kick's a little harsh, you know, this area right here in particular. Make this a bell filter type, maybe give it a different filter here. Figures just when the breakdown happens. You can hear all that low energy. I don't want to boost too much, and I don't want to boost there. Just sort of right, kind of where the most of the bass is. Right where the higher harmonics of the kick kind of come in. So yours without our EQ, the mid side on. And here you can hear kind of the side processing open everything up a bit. I might add a little bit more in the sides here. Actually make this a digital filter, which is an asymmetrical bell. And I might just sort of play with it where we can boost some stuff a little bit. And that asymmetrical bell just kind of helped to push that shelf a little bit more in the lower spectrum there, just to kind of get a little bit more content and make that start of the shelf a little bit. You might run into a couple little phase issues between these two filters here, but you're on the super high frequencies, so you shouldn't get too much ridiculous cancellation. You should be okay. Listening to it now doesn't sound too bad, so we'll move on and see if we run into issues later. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to run this through a full full range compressor. Pretty much everyone's go-to is the SSL emulation by Waves. I really like its transient response and kind of how it works. It just sounds great on everything. I'm gonna load up a preset here. And I'm actually gonna disable analog mode. It changes things up a little bit. It's not what I want to do for this electronic mix. And it'll get rid of a lot of our noise too. And I'm just gonna bring this back up, and we're gonna slowly bring it down until we start to hear it engage and kind of catch, bring up the level of the mix just a little bit. You can see we have a really slow attack, so all of our transients are still gonna be coming in just, nice and hot as ever, which is good. It's gonna help kind of hopefully preserve a little bit of our dynamic range in our attacks, which will help us with limiting later on. You can hear like that kick just really starts to come out with all that low end RMS energy. So let me pull it out, go back to this section here, and you'll hear it just sort of come in. I'll let it play for a few bars first. Sort of cleans up everything. Alright, so I like the default attack settings on that. Now we're going to do a little bit of multi-band compression with Waves C6. C4 is great, C6 is a bit more flexible, and the extra flexible bands are invaluable. So I'm just going to load an old preset from C4 called multi-opto mastering. And I really like what multi-opto mastering does. It's a opto isolator based compressor model, so it gives it a little bit more liveliness than standard FET based electrical compressor model that this guy has. And now we're just going to tweak some of the settings a little bit here. So generally the mid-range is super sensitive to compression. The human ear can really hear it, so I'm just going to tighten down the range a little bit just so we're not chopping up too many dynamics here. We'll go back to this section again. I'm just going to solo the low band here real quick, and we'll just give this a listen. Maybe bring up my crossover center frequency. Yeah, we'll solo the mids. And give a little bit more range. Alright, let's check out our high mids. Yeah. Just kind of contain the little snare hits and claps. Let's check out the ultra highs. Let's give a bit more dynamic range. Kind of let those hi-hats sort of cut through there. We'll go back to this bit. Now, the kick kind of stuck out to me a bit. I kind of want to grab one of these bands here and just sort of hear where we start hear the kick coming in. Gonna bring up my quality just to make it more selective here, and we're gonna just sort of sweep through and listen to where we really hear the kick. I think right there is kind of where it's sticking out. The low end stuff's okay. This is really cutting, so we're gonna bring down the range just a little hair. And we're just gonna get the very top of that attack. It's not not really a transient because it's low frequency, but that kick attack. And I'm gonna make sure that my attack's super low just so we catch it right away. You can see that really kind of engaged, but it's still fast enough, so it's gonna be pretty transparent. Let's unsolo it and hear it for ourselves. Alright, maybe bring up the mids again a little bit. I might actually bring up the super highs. The vocal bit's kind of standing out to me too, so we're going to solo this and try to get the raspiness in the vocal there. Just something super subtle here to maybe kind of help with that. And then bring this dynamic range of this compressor just so we're almost not really using it. It's a bit too narrow. Just to kind of catch those vocals. Go back to this section again. So far we haven't seen many changes here in our meter for the RMS. And depending on that gain setting, it might have actually went down a little bit. So now we're going to start limiting. So I like to start with a full range limiter. We'll go with pretty much everyone's go-to again, Waves L2. Throw it in before our Duro here. And the automatic release characters are fine. The one thing we want to change though is the built-in dithering here. The intelligent dithering that Waves does. We want to make sure that we have 24-bit quantization, which is good. But we need to make sure that all of our shaping and things are off. And when it is off, this light goes away saying that the plugin's no longer dithering. We want to avoid dithering here because we're going to have another plugin in our train probably. And dithering twice or dithering and going into more plugins can have some weird different acoustical impacts and things. So now we're going to go back to probably our loudest section again real quick. I'm just going to start bringing in this limiter just until we start kind of hearing it kick in. You can look at the meter on the right there and just see when we actually start getting some gain reduction. Alright, so you can see that kick in. I might bring it down a little bit, just because I'm not... Shaping is okay. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is... I'm actually going to use a stock lab device, just a standard limiter here. And we're going to throw this in. I'm actually going to change my ceiling here to be -0.1. Gives us a little bit of headroom for other limiters, make sure we're not actually getting exactly 0 dBFS, and it'll kind of solve any inner sample peaks later. And now we can just slowly gain this up until we get a little bit of super subtle clipping. As you can see, I'm actually arguably clipping with the limiter here, but it's just sort of, you know, containing a little bit. I actually got another dB and a half of RMS boost there, which is nice. And the last thing we want to do is we're going to go back to our plugins. We're going to use a multi-band maximizer. I'm going to go with the low latency version of Waves L3 limiter, which is a multi-band limiter. So we're going to throw this before our durometer. you can see that sometimes we get some inner sample peaks here on the Giro. So I'm just gonna change our output gain to like negative 0.1 dB, just something to, you know, not super noticeable, but to keep it away from kind of crushing 0 dBFS. And I want to load a release profile here on this guy. Just something to kind of help these multibands kind of pick up the stuff where I want it to. You can see this already starting to limit, but I'm just gonna push that so we kind of see that RMS just go up there. But you can see here on the Duro, any inner channel peaks here aren't actually going above 0 dBFS, which is nice. You can see here how it's staying there. We're not getting any red clipping anymore, and our RMS is pretty high. Bringing this down just a hair. I'm actually going to adjust the priority here on some of these. I'm going to give a bit less priority to this low end, actually. You can see we're not really taking up too much here. 2 or 3 dB every now and then, maybe with super big transients, maybe, you know, 6 dB or so, but it's a really fast attack and release characteristic here, so it's pretty transparent. And as long as we don't dither in live, we can leave this dithering on. I'm just going to change the shaping to ultra, which will make it a bit more higher quality. And I tend to prefer type 2 dithering over type 1. 24-bit quantization as usual. If we're going to go down to a 16-bit wave, we can quantize into 16 bits in here.
As fuck tonight.
So I'm just going to group all these together. Now I'm going to turn them off and we'll listen to it without this mastering chain. Not bad. And then we'll throw it on again. So here we go. Now that we have this limiting on though, we might want to go back and just sort of tweak the kick and the multiband compressor. It seems like there's still a little bit of mush going on the low end. I'm going to see if I can tighten that up a little bit. Make this a little bit wider of a filter here. And maybe bring it down a little bit. There we go. I'm going to bring its range down too. Alright, not bad. Let's check over here. Now, you know, we could push these maximizers a bit more here. We could juice some more out of it if you want. I like more dynamic range. I think, you know, this is sufficient enough for most people. It's close, you know, to what production is for the most part. You're at like, you know, 10-12 dB dynamic range. You can, you know, bring this down a little bit, kind of make everything cut a bit more.
I plan on getting drunk as fuck tonight. 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 Drunk as fuck.
And there you go, guys. That's a pretty obviously quick master. It'd take a lot more time and listen to different systems, obviously, but it'll get you close. At least that's what my mindset is.
Drunk as fuck tonight.
So yeah, there you have it. You know, we're hitting, you know, negative 6 dB RMS on the Giro. That's pretty much production levels, and it still sounds pretty dynamic. It's not bad. Obviously, could use a bit more work, especially in the low end. I'm still not happy with it, but that'll take some time, which we don't have for this video. So thanks very much, guys.